Welcome back. In the last session, I argued that human contact and the creativity that it produces is the essential purpose of the city. Well, the city was not always seen that way. In 1880, when the European and American cities were going through their rapid process of industrialization, cities were seen basically as a place to house the employees that ran the factories. And in many Asian cities today, factory owners build dormitory towns beside their plants. We'll see in week 7 how the industrialists were among the first people to imagine the new form of cities that was required for this industrial era. But through much of the 20th century, public bodies considered their main task to be that of separating out industry from residential areas, leisure areas from commerce in the city. The city was to be a tidy collection of single-use areas. People would be living at a distance from where they worked, but also at a distance from the smokestacks and the trucks and the trains. And large pleasure palaces would be built at the shores of the ocean, but not in the middle of residential areas. So when we look back on that era 50 years from now, it's probably going to seem as something of an anomaly. Before industrialization, the uses of the city were all mixed up. I noted earlier that in the 18th century, Philadelphia was a city where orchards and factories were located in the spaces between houses. Artisans lived above the shop and their employees were out back. Living conditions weren't great, but you didn't have to commute, and many people could live almost their entire lives within their neighborhood. In smaller ways, some of the mixing of uses survived even through the great sorting out period of American history. There were corner stores in residential areas, doctors' offices on the ground floor of apartment towers, rows of shops below the offices in many downtowns, and even some downtown housing areas that found its way into the corner of commercial districts. But in many cities, housing was actually prohibited downtown in office areas, and certainly in industrial areas. And workplaces were excluded from residential areas. So today, cities are rediscovering the virtue of mixing things up again. We explore why and how and what the challenges are in this session. So let's start with mixed-use buildings. Creating a complete city in a single building has been an aspiration of every architect with a large ego. Frank Lloyd Wright produced a vision for Illinois Sky City in 1956, which is shown here. It would be a building a mile high with 528 stories squeezed in, each one just the right height for his short stature. There would be everything you needed: workspaces, residences, shops, recreation places, even parking for 15,000 cars and 150 helicopters in case you needed to travel to another mile-high city. The lobbies would be the plazas, and the elevators would be the new streets. Nobody has built a mile-high city, but a variety of tall buildings have been built at mixed uses within a single structure. The John Hancock Building in Chicago contains parking and offices at the bottom, housing at the top, shops, restaurants, and a sky lobby halfway up with a swimming pool and a health club. The top of the tower is smaller than the bottom, since every room in a house needs light and you can work a long distance from the windows in an office space. There are dozens of tall buildings in Asia that mix uses. The Jinmao Tower in Shanghai has offices topped off by a wonderful hotel with an atrium that starts on the 40th floor. And the current record holder for tall buildings, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is half a mile high, has a hotel, apartments, clubs and recreation facilities, office suites for corporations and other uses. It tapers to the top where it is small enough so that only a single company or person owns a floor. This, along with the Hancock and Jinmao Towers, was designed by the Chicago office of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, perhaps inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's vision for the mile-high city. But Frank Lloyd Wright had to settle for less. In Bartlesville, Oklahoma, he designed the Price Tower that contained on every floor both housing and offices, so you could live next door to your work. The building is now 60 years old and continues to be a mixed-use building. Recently, several of the floors were taken over by a small boutique hotel. This flexibility was possible because of the ingenious floor plan, with 4 modules on a floor that can be reached independently or combined. But a building need not be tall to mix work and living and shopping. One of my favorite mixed-use buildings is in Oakland, California, the Rock Ridge Market Hall just across the street from the Rock Ridge Transit Station. It sticks to the scale of the residential neighborhood and in just 3 floors combines shopping, including a fresh food market, restaurants, and other shops, offices, mainly inhabited by psychiatrists, and housing at the top. Each of the upper floor uses has a separate lobby and entrance. The ground level adds life to the streets while providing a convenient environment for those who live and work there. This is also the case in Boston at Heritage on the Garden, a wonderful mixed-use project just across from the public garden. Retail shops occupy the ground level, then there are 6 stories of offices which fill out the entire block, and 5 stories of residential condominiums at the top. Since the housing wants to have shallower depths than the offices, it is set back from the street, which serves also to retain the scale of the street. In the U.S., a variety of hurdles make it difficult to build mixed-use projects. These include zoning restrictions, financing difficulties, ownership considerations, and the resistance of tenants. But in many other countries, there are long traditions of mixing living with shops and offices. Here in Harajuku, one of the most edgy neighborhoods of Tokyo, every building contains a mixture, all within 4 stories. In most areas of Tokyo, there are no restrictions on the kind of uses that can inhabit buildings, only restrictions on the form of the building, especially not allowing it to block light down to the street level. The result is a wonderful hodgepodge of small buildings which are set back from the street to allow light to penetrate. Usually housing is at the top and offices below, but there's no universal rule. In Taipei, housing and offices and shops are also allowed in most buildings. There's just one rule: offices can't be above housing. That way, noise and security aren't compromised by outsiders visiting the building. One of the most important virtues of mixed-use buildings and areas is that they avoid what this image shows: dark, uninhabited streets that seem unsafe to walk at night. Mixed-use areas are active 24/7. The Dutch have learned this lesson well, and in most commercial areas they layer housing above shops. In the new town of Almere, outside of Amsterdam, a second ground level has been built above the shops. The housing ranges from 3 to 15 stories, and there are just enough people to assure that the streets are never empty. And the mix of people throughout the day and night is impressive. Many people come to the center by car and park in the garage below it, but an equal number walk there or come from the Almere Centrum, which is the train station that connects the new town to the rest of Holland. I visited midwinter, and while the Dutch are hardy people, the streets were equally filled as in summer. They demonstrate that well-designed outdoor shopping places can work, even in cold climates. The residential areas above the shops enjoy green roofs and outdoor spaces where they can go outside to take in the wonderful summer weather. There's almost as much greenery at Almere now as before the development. And in a northern climate with plenty of gray skies, color is also appreciated. Here the buildings are entered directly from the retail level or the parking below, and each building has shops at its base. Almere City Center is also well endowed with cultural institutions, a performing arts center, and a place for practicing the arts, music, ceramics, painting, and so on. Movie theaters, museums, and best of all, a wonderful public library. It is open to all and encouraged people to pick up books as they enter, sit down and browse through them. The library is also filled from the moment it opens with people who work there in their small service businesses. They take advantage of fast internet connections. And at night, the library is a beacon of light, open late into the evening. Designing for day and night was the central idea behind the Sony Center in Berlin. It is a place for spectacles and music and is the host venue for the Berlin Film Festival. Below its plaza are a dozen movie theaters and experimental test beds for new types of Sony entertainment. There is also a large IMAX theater. Integrated into the complex is the German Film Archive, open to all. Shops surround the plaza, which consists of a mixture of offices, housing, and other workaday functions. Sony Center is really 2 different places. A second layer of buildings facing the street are much more staid and conform to the ethos of Berlin's controlled facades, all limited to 30 meters in height. Only a single tower for the German railways punctuates the skyline, marking a key edge of the Potsdamer Platz. The idea of an inner and outer world was clear in Helmut Jahn's first sketches for Sony Center. Sometimes the first sketch gets it exactly right. And even in a limited height, the Sony headquarters is a head-turning building with its atrium on the 7th floor and its training and child care facilities at ground level so all can see them. And while the Grand Plaza may be buzzing at night, it is positively serene during the day, perfectly acceptable for the residents of the housing building that's shown. There is not one formula for creating a lively mixed-use center. Each must be designed with local conditions in mind. In Atlanta, Georgia, a new center called Atlantic Station has risen on a former brownfield site. It combines offices, housing, entertainment uses, and shopping in a compact center. It is designed so that its streets are lively at least 16 hours a day. The site was the home of the Atlantic Seal Company for many decades and left a legacy of badly polluted soil and water. The urban design is ingenious. The tall buildings are located near the expressway and shielded area from noise. The lower residential buildings provide the interface with the adjacent neighborhoods. New parks have been created around the complex beyond the areas that are polluted to provide green relief from the high-density areas. But the really ingenious move was to construct the commercial area over a two-story parking structure that is shared by all the uses on this site. It has a practical purpose of providing a cap for the seriously polluted ground, but it also allows parking to be shared. Office workers in this car-oriented city need parking spaces in the day. Those who are there for the movies need them in the evening, and residents need them overnight. By sharing, they can get away with a lot less parking. And habits are changing with more people using Transit Atlanta, and the Atlantic Center allows people to forego buying a second car. A lot of people have decided they'd rather be near entertainment and restaurants, and the area is crowded with people. Atlanta has one of the fastest growing downtown populations in an American city. While the site is dense, there's room for green spaces and less polluted land surrounding it, which benefit the new residents as well as the neighbors. Living, working, and shopping and playing in a compact neighborhood has become the formula for attracting the creative class to cities. We are becoming increasingly comfortable with mixing them side by side, one over the other, or even within the same building. Tribeca in New York is at the vanguard of this movement. But it is also finding its way into suburban developments, as here in Portland, Oregon at Orenco Station, which is a transit-oriented development. And even where you might not expect it, as in this small mixed-use development in the Florida resort town of Seaside. You know the city is changing when people on vacation want to be able to work and shop in the same building where they are recreating. As we've seen, mixed-use areas have many advantages. On the purely practical side, they save land by avoiding such things as costly parking and infrastructure that sits idle for more than half the day. Mixing uses is actually the real key to creating 24-hour cities. They build a market for shops, restaurants, entertainment, and culture. People that are living there are working there. It's not accidental that the cultural attractions in the cities that have been greatly successful are usually areas that have housing around them. They create eyes on the street over the day and the night and result in places that are more secure. Some of the finest areas of cities are places with a broad mixture of uses. Think, for example, of the old city of Bern, Switzerland, with people living over shops and wonderful arcades that connect the city together. Or think of the emerging area of Chelsea with its gritty mixture of museums, galleries, condominiums above them. Even one of the most expensive condominiums sits next door to a women's prison. As cities make the transition to being service economies, and the suburbs are forced to do so as well, it will be proximity and mixing it up that'll be valued much more than neatly separated environments. Next week, we'll go into a little more detail on this as to how to create places that are valued and reflect these kinds of virtues. Please join us.